Hello, Misfit entrepreneurs. This is Dave Lukas, and welcome to another episode of the Misfit Entrepreneur, where it is our job to help you unleash your inner misfit and break through to higher levels of success, wealth, and fulfillment by bringing you your best insight and information from the world's top entrepreneurs, with a specific focus on their misfit side, the specific traits, habits, and secrets that have allowed them to thrive and succeed. As a reminder, if you are new to watching us on our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button below, give this video a like and comment as well. We do our best to respond to all comments as timely as possible. This week's Misfit Entrepreneur is Kayla Logue. Kayla went from divorced with $900 to her name at 25 to millionaire in just a few years. How did she do it? By taking radical responsibility for herself and owning her life. She found a niche in the real estate space, joining a business selling land. From there, she built out the business to where she was a top producer in 4 states. And her new book is called Always Squeezing Lemons, Taking Responsibility to Define Your Own Success. The book is a guide to help readers define real success, what it means to them, and how to get it. One thing that I've always taken to heart, and something that is consistent among the most successful entrepreneurs that we have on the show, is taking full responsibility for themselves, their lives, business, their actions, and so on. And so I've asked Kayla to come on because I'm excited for her to share her journey of how she took responsibility and created the life that she'd always wanted, and how you can too. So Kayla, are you ready to unleash your inner misfit?
Yes, Dave, I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you on. And, you've got just an awesome story, right? And I want to start there. Take, 5 minutes or so and just tell us, how did you get to where you're at?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting and it's crazy. It started in 2020, midst of COVID. I think a lot of people have interesting stories during that time frame. And it wasn't something that happened right as COVID happened. It wasn't an explosion during COVID or a recollection during COVID. It was a buildup, and it just happened to align kind of in that time frame. And really, it was, of course, from my book that you already introduced, Always Squeezing Lemons. I really love metaphors. I think they're the most easiest and simple ways to take complex things and put them into simple terms for anyone to really take and apply. And in one word, kind of felt like I was stuck in the wrong box, and I was checking other people's boxes in the life I was before. I was married to a young, intelligent, handsome man. We had 2 houses. We had a dog. We had what looked like the picture perfect life. And I was miserable. And, what I did some self-reflection. For a long time, I was just going. And I was complacent, coasting, and doing everything that for me, that just doesn't match my personality. And I got stuck, and I realized I was doing all these things conforming to what I felt like I should be doing, rather than asking myself the question of like what I really wanted. And when I stopped and asked myself what I wanted, everything that I was doing was nothing along the lines of what I wanted to do. And it took me stepping back to make a step forward. And that big step, there was a handful of months trying to figure it out and work through it. But it led into a divorce. It led into leaving everything behind, and it led into completely starting over with really no direction at all. I'd be lying if I sat here and said that, in 2020 that I'd be sitting here talking to you. I had no idea. But it did require me to do the hard personal work and figure out, okay, what is that next step? And really trusting my intuition and leaning into the skills that I knew I had and could really leverage to get me into a better position. And that's how I landed the job in the real estate that I am now. It's a land development company. We have properties in several states across the country. And, I found a lot of my strengths in terms of communication, building my network from that. And that's where I really excelled. It was the soft skills that propelled me really far forward in the real estate industry. It wasn't coming in. I mean, I had never worked in real estate. I've been around the business. I'm smart. I can pick up on things quickly, but it wasn't the hard skills or the closing of the sale that, got me forward. It was me being able to communicate and be authentic and genuine and trustworthy with my clients, and led me to a lot of success. And through this, of course, it was a lot of personal development. And I was like, I have to write a book. I have to share my story. I have to, the whole process of writing the book itself was very healing and very therapeutic, and learned more about myself than I could have imagined. And it definitely relays in the story itself.
You mentioned the metaphors in the book. So why did you name the book Squeezing Lemons?
So, Always Squeezing Lemons. I think it's really that portion of where, it's not just you squeeze one lemon and life's over, right? It's you're consistently like, life's going to throw you challenges. There's going to be hardships, and it's continuing to show up and figure it out, right? It's taking the responsibility to figure it out. So it's always squeezing lemons, because you're always going to have stuff to deal with, right? You don't know what the highs feel like unless you feel the lows, and there's going to be lemons thrown your way all the time. Right. So it's consistently, being able to do that and show up for yourself.
I've said for years that most people don't get what they want because they don't know what they want, right? And I think that's something that I think that's where you were, and you had to figure that out.
Oh, for sure.
And so, and I know you talk about this in the book too, but I mean, if you're talking to someone, or if you want to share, the path, right? How should someone go about answering those key questions of like, who am I? What do I want? What do I want to become?
Well, I think, and also this is something that I weave into my book as well, a practice where things started really to evolve for me, and where I started to really be able to get deep and intentional with those questions was when I started journaling. And it's such a simple, practical tool, and you hear it a lot, and it seems like there's no way, because I was reluctant to it. I was like, there's absolutely no way this is going to work. Like, why would writing my thoughts down, why would a 25-year-old with a pretty much overdue diary be something that would help me get any further? And it was life-changing. It was as soon as I started becoming what I say, be vulnerable with the pages, when I started being vulnerable and putting things down and really allowing things to almost be manifested through pages of journals on a daily basis, that's when stuff started happening. When I started writing down, I wanted to write a book. I wanted to own my own house. I wanted to do all these things. I had no money. I was just figuring out my life. And then flash forward 2 years later, everything I was writing down and building upon and processing happened. And it's not like you just write it down and it happens. Of course, there's work that requires to build into that point, but putting it down on paper, I think, is one of the most easiest and practical tools that anybody could start with. And it is also, it's even coming back to the whole point of my one sentence liner that describes my book. It's taking responsibility to define your success, right? You have to ask yourself those hard questions. Like, a lot of us sometimes don't really want to, we think we want to know those questions, but we don't want to dig deep enough to find the answers to them. So we have to be, really honest with ourselves, because sometimes the things that we want, we're scared to want because it's against society's approval. We're fearful of what our friends are going to think. We're fearful of trying it. We're fearful of failing. There's a lot of, and that fear is woven into the stories that I share in my book too, and kind of how to overcome that and creating certainty and trust in yourself.
Well, we should talk about that, because that's a great point, and talk about overcoming it, because most people never do this for themselves because they're afraid of what they'll find. They're afraid of confronting themselves in the deepest areas, right? Or dealing with stuff that, has been there forever, that they've, effectively suppressed and they don't want to deal with, right? And go through that process of fixing or that sort of thing. So how do people overcome the fear or the inertia, or just that not wanting to deal with your internal challenges that you have, right? How do you do it?
Yeah. I think it's probably different for everybody. I think we all have different vices and ways to overcome it. It's really figuring out what works and is healthy. For me, like, writing was something like I've always been an athlete my whole life. I've always worked out hard. It's always been something that I have to do. But to a point where I was putting it in a detriment, and I thought I could just outrun my feelings and move on and it would be fine. And that wasn't working, So the processing part, I think, also finding a community to talk to, whether it's a therapist or it's just a group of people that bring you up. When you're around, like, your environment's a huge key. Finding people to help you kind of work through things, I think, is really important. That's even one of the reasons why I started my nonprofit, Move Into Words, is kind of cultivating that community of growth mindset at individuals. So I think when you're around people like that, and if you want success, if whatever that looks like for you, you've got to be around people that want the same, that want to grow as well, right? If you're kind of in that complacent point, it's going to be hard to deep dive and pull that stuff out of you. If you're around people that just like to be, like, as I say, complacent and coasting and staying in the norm, why would you want to even, how would you even necessarily know that you need to pull that out of yourself? So I think, one, it's, finding what works for you to be able to work through that, but then also surrounding yourself with the right people to, bring you up. Mentors are important, but even just being around the right group of people.
Well, I think to add to it too, you have to make the choice. Like everything in life is a choice. And I don't think people really understand that. Like every action you do and everything, it's a choice. And so, and you're choosing it. And I think people have to make that choice that they are going to, like, take a Friday, sit down for the day and ask yourself first, who am I? And then challenge yourself to that first answer, because the first answer is probably not right anyways. And second, third level deep, right? What do I truly want? Right? And go, why do I want it? Why is it so important? Is this really what I want? Right? Most people don't know who they really are. Right? And then you have to ask, all right, once you get all that set, you got to ask yourself, like, okay, then, once I know that, right? What are the values that I live by? What are the core values that are me? Right? And then who can I become because of that? And it's an exercise that most people don't do. But I find that those that have had the epiphany, or have, gone from like a position maybe you were in to success, right? And figured that way out. Now, like you said, there's all the work in between. You can't just think it and manifest it, but you're 50% of the way there, right? You got to do the work after that. But it seems like everybody who's done that or gone through that rite of passage just had to go through that first part of making that choice and really digging deep on themselves to cement things. And then it all falls into place from there. Would you agree?
100%. And it's interesting. And I think that choice is what holds a lot of people back, right? And it's almost like, I think maybe some people know that they have to make the choice, but they're too scared to just do it, right? Just making that first step, taking that first step, whether it's a small move, big move. That's why I really do love, of course, it's an amazing book. Everyone knows about it, Atomic Habits. It's talking about the small things over time that make a big difference.
Tiny gains.
And then all of a sudden it explodes. And it's so true. It's, I think now we're so accustomed to like what I call the microwave society. It's instant gratification. It's easy. We just think things happen overnight rather than the consistency and the discipline and showing up every single day. And I heard this the other day, and I think it's really, applicable to anybody that wants to grow. It's self-discipline equals self-love. And when you're disciplined enough to, sit down, ask yourself those questions and take action on them, it does, even though it's hard and it's a lot of times sucks, like the self-love that comes from it that continues to build it's so empowering, and it helps you get through anything that's hard. It's interesting. I think over the past couple of years, I've had a lot of success, but oh my gosh, there's so many things where there's been a lot of hard. There's been a ton of hard, and there continues to be a lot of hard. And, as you grow and as you have success and you're building and building more, as an entrepreneur, you just keep coming up with more things you want to grow and build. So there's new challenges, there's new things that you know what your purpose is and you know what you want to become, but new ways show up to be able to implement that. Right. And it just becomes more challenging, but also more exciting, and you be able to trust yourself a little bit more. So yeah, it's just starting.
Yeah, there's a couple things too, and the piece of that you're saying you're hinting at too is like, and it goes back to what I was saying a minute ago. It's once you know yourself, it makes things much easier, right? The other thing that you mentioned, and that's something that we've talked about on the show a lot, and it brings it up, and it's great to reiterate because you said most of it right there, is the discipline side of it, right? So a long time ago, I like studying entrepreneurs like yourself and others, and just even my own journey. I came up with this really simple formula called DCP, and it's discipline, consistency, and persistence. Right now, you say that, right? Everybody's like, yeah, you need those three things to succeed, but what do they really mean, right? So discipline is doing the things that you know you need to do, even when you don't want to do them. Consistency is doing that day in and day out without fail, because you can be disciplined for one day, but that doesn't do you any good if you fall off of it, right? And then even if you are disciplined and consistent, and this is the part I want to hear you talk about, because I think this is goes to your story. Even if you are disciplined, even if you are consistent, you are going to hit these plateaus or these what seem insurmountable roadblocks that if you aren't willing to persist through, that's where you stagnate, that's where you stop. And it seems like that's like kind of where you were before you made the decision to change your life. Like you were probably disciplined, you're probably consistent, but you had this big, massive, like roadblock or plateau that you were on that you knew was there, and you had to eventually make the choice to persist and go through it to get to the other side to where you're at now, or you would have stayed there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I completely agree. And I think like even now, when you break down that formula, I think persistence really talks to kind of the deeper levels of what we were talking about before, like your values and like who you are and finding that, because persistence is something that I think you have to have something greater than just yourself that you're working towards to implement that, right? Like you have to show up and be disciplined. You have to show up and be consistent, but persistence is something that like the motivation lies deeper than just yourself. It's showing up for somebody else or showing up for something greater. And when you can find that, and for me, like, you know, I lost what that was for a while, and that's what scared me. And then when I was able to really step back and evaluate, like, of course I was, you know, disciplined and consistent. That's in my blood. That's how I am. Right. But you know, the persistence was lost. I was coasting and complacent, and the persistence, like that fire was reignited. I was like, I have a bigger purpose, and I'm not going to serve it where I'm at. I have, you know, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I'll say that's a great way to illustrate it. Please continue.
Oh, yeah, no, I think, but I mean, until you broke it down that way, I don't think I could have been able to really put that into words. So I love that formula, but I definitely think it's you have to find those values and morals and things that are way deeper rooted than just the surface level of doing it and showing up.
Oh, absolutely. And what's cool about that formula for you, for everybody listening too, is you can analyze just about everything through it. You can analyze areas of your life, like my health. Am I disciplined? Okay, I'm disciplined. Am I consistent? Oh, I'm not consistent. Oh, okay, I can fix that, right? Or I'm disciplined, I'm consistent, but I'm not getting what I want. What is it that I'm not willing to push through, right? I'm not willing to up my exercise routine more, or I'm not willing to cut this type of food from my diet, or that sort of thing. You look at a business, right? Let's look at the sales area of a business, right? Are they disciplined? Are they consistent? Are they, are they against a big roadblock that they aren't willing to persist through? So what's cool is you start looking through that lens, and you can solve so many issues and problems with those three things. In fact, I want to come back to journaling for a second, because one of the things that, you mentioned earlier, and we were kind of talking about, is that it's helped you have these major kind of epiphanies in your life. So tell us a little bit about, what those were and how that came about, and some of those other benefits of journaling that you found. And then I want to get into some of these lemon drops that are from your book.
Yeah. So I actually write about the story, like literally all through chapter 3 of my book. Like I talk about how my sister was actually the person that was like, you need to start journaling. And this was in the summer of 2020. I was going through like the divorce. I was trying to figure out my life. I was staying with my aunt down in Florida. It was just chaos. I mean, I was honestly like very positive for the situation going on and kind of trying to figure it out. But I was running a lot, and I hated running. Like running was not my thing, but it was something that like where I actually was able to find peace in. And I was running anywhere from like 6 to 10 miles a day, which was completely nuts for me. But it was me just trying to outrun my thoughts. Like I was thinking on repeat through, while I'm running, but that didn't do anything. I just kept thinking. I wasn't doing anything besides thinking about it. And one day I finally gave in. She threw little hints at me. She's super smart. She's a double major in psychology and Spanish. And she was like practically a therapist for me through the whole thing. And finally decided to do it. And it was like the moment, like the weirdest sense of clarity that had ever happened. Like I just sat down one night after like staring at a journal for probably 2 hours, and I just started writing. I mean, literally about 10 pages, filled it up, and it was like the biggest weight off my shoulders ever. It was super interesting. And it was just me putting things down on paper that I was just living in my brain on repeat, and things that, personal, professional, just so many different thoughts. So it became a continuous practice. And I started to have like processing of epiphanies pretty much like, one, I needed to show up for myself before I could show up for others. I needed to start to build that relationship for myself, figure out who I was before I could ever be in a healthy, romantic relationship, or even like just relationship in general. I needed to start really kind of identifying those things. And there were things I needed to clean up for myself and to be able to continue to build forward. And I just started to kind of unfold more through that as I continued to write. And that's why I have a journal prompt actually at the end of each chapter of my book. The way my book's kind of broken down is there's like kind of a theme lesson, and it's used through my experiences, my stories. But then at the end, each chapter is like a self-reflection opportunity. So it has the lemon drop, which is kind of the key takeaway from the chapter, almost like a meme you would find on Instagram, like, oh, wow, this really hits home, right? And then the journal prompt that applies pretty much to that key takeaway that you could use for yourself.
I'm curious, as you went through that process, did forgiveness come in anywhere?
Yes, self-forgiveness. I think it's one of the things, I think self-forgiveness is important before you can truly forgive others, in a sense, because if you don't know how to forgive yourself, how can you truly forgive somebody else? I was literally talking to one of my coworkers the other day. We had just a misunderstanding with clients and stuff. And they were like, oh my gosh, do you hate me? I was like, I can't hold a grudge first, I can't hold a grudge ever. I can't be mad more than 5 minutes. So like, we're good, I promise. But yeah, forgiveness is, I think a lot of us have a hard time with self-forgiveness. I think it's something that we overlook a lot too as a process of growth.
Well, it's part of also going back to our previous discussion about making the choice to deal with those things that you don't want to deal with that are maybe deep down and all that stuff to really find who you really are. A lot of that is forgiving stuff from your past that may have happened to you, but also forgiving yourself. That's, part of getting past that is that. In fact, a good friend of mine, he's been on the show, his name's Evan Money, talk about an awesome name, does a whole talk on the return on forgiveness. So his whole thing is on the return on forgiveness, because he went through some particularly really, really bad things as a child and everything, and carried that weight with him like an albatross around his neck for a better part of his life until he finally forgave everything, including himself, and everything clicked for him after that. Everything, he's global entrepreneur, he's multi-millionaire and all that. But it didn't really click until he went through and forgave all of that. So there is a return on that forgiveness, and I've always loved that phrase from him. All right, so lemon drops, right? So there's 7 lemon drops, as you call them, right? So talk about, give us what they are and how they apply to personal growth.
Well, there's really, the way they're set up is there's 12 chapters. So there's 12 total at the end of each chapter.
Okay.
So they're different depending on which way they, which chapter is. I can grab my book and read one if you'd like.
if you want to, I think it'd be great to share some of them with everybody.
Yeah, I have one. Hang on one second. I'm back. It was right here.
Yeah, and for all those watching, she can hold up the book, show them a copy, what it looks like.
Always squeezing lemons. Yeah, it's a super simple, easy cover. I really like it. So like I said, at the end of each chapter, it's lemon drop first and then the journal prompt. So, there's a couple ones. I like honestly all of them. I spent a good amount of time, really, because it summarizes an entire chapter, right? This is the chapter 4, for example. I just flipped to it. It's your trauma is your trauma. And this is a lemon drop at the end of that chapter. It's do not compare your problems to anyone else's. You're responsible for your trauma only. Exercise discipline. Self-forgiveness is key. Resentment is lethal. Do not hold a self-grudge for actions that don't make you proud. Learn from them and move on. So weirdly, very relevant to what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what the lemon drops entail. I can grab another one too.
Yeah, give us a couple of your favorites. Those are good.
I like this chapter a lot. It's called You're Not a Tree. And it's about boundaries and really self-respect and how I lost it for myself through detrimental actions and how I learned to re-implement these things in every area of my life. This one's pretty short. Giving too much of yourself will put you in a position to lose yourself. Saying no can be hard, but if it is protecting you, the hurt that follows saying yes will be harder.
That's absolutely true. Having, anybody who's experienced anything like that knows that. All right, what else you got? We'll do one more, and then I've got a few more questions for you.
Yeah, so this one's actually good. I really like this one. It's from my next chapter, which is be confident, become courageous. And this is the lemon drop of that one. It's prioritize positivity and remove negativity. Your own mental narrative is either your strongest asset or your Achilles heel. So again, super simple, straight to the point, but really summarizes key points to drive home.
Yeah, I mean, your inner game always reflects in your outer game. And, to me, it reminds me too, like, so what is our inner game, right? That, determines our outer game. It's our attitude. The way we approach every single day, the attitude that we take determines how, we function in that day. And it's a simple thing. And I can't show it now, but I got a whiteboard over here in my office. And at the top of the whiteboard, I've done this, it's now going on 15 years. It says, what type of attitude will I choose to have today? And it says good or great, fair or poor. And every day I come in, I have to circle it. So like I have to circle great, fair or poor. And so not once have I ever circled fair or poor. And as rudimentary as that sounds, if you know anything about conditioning and programming and that sort of thing, like every day I'm making the choice that I'm going to choose to have a great attitude because we choose everything, right? And so I choose that every single day. So when things maybe, because not every day is great, right? From the standpoint of how things go. And so if things aren't going the way that they should for the day, though, if I start to feel myself starting to feel bad for myself or, start to thinking negatively, I've got this looking at it. I'm like, I chose to have a great attitude today. All right. How do I redirect this? What can I control versus what I can't control? How do I, improve upon here? What's the best outcome that I can get, even though this didn't go the way that I wanted to, and so on. And it's a little thing like that just makes such a difference. And, that's a great point in your book that, people can choose that. You can choose your attitude every single day. So, I'm sure you've done the same.
I mean, exactly. My dad gave me this advice, and it's interesting. You hear this advice, but until it's like clicks with you and you really implement it in your life, it means nothing. And like you said, control what you can control, as simply put as you can. Like, what can you control in every situation that starts to defeat you? And a lot of the times it's stuff that's out of our control that gives us anxiety, and we're freaking out about things that are out of our control. And I still catch myself doing it, and I have to redirect. Yeah, you have to redirect yourself. I mean, we do it naturally as human beings. We're going to do it. We're not perfect. We're going to start to freak out over things. And then it's a matter of checking yourself.
Yeah, no, I agree. And worry is, I'm trying to remember the phrase. Worry's like a debt that can never be repaid, that you basically aren't, ultimately responsible for. Like it basically, worry just weighs on people, and it's about things that you can't do anything about or that you have no control over. So sitting there worrying about it just weighs on you like a debt that you can't do anything about. Right. And I think that's another thing is, instead of worrying and spending the energy on that, redirect it on, like you said, control what you can control. Right. And that's another really great
I like that.
point. Yeah. I want to shift gears and talk a little bit about your entrepreneur journey. I'd be remiss if we didn't before we get to your Misfit 3. So talk a little bit about your journey. Like, how'd you get into the real estate business, and you started at zero? How did you go to where, you're top producer in 4 states, you're, become, kind of this powerhouse in the space? What did you do to do that? What are some things you've learned along the way on how to build a business?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. It's funny. I was listening to one of your more recent podcasts with Chelsea, and she was talking about how her background was in broadcasting, and so was mine. And then I also realized that they, make $20,000 a year. I was like, I'm okay, and it just wasn't really, where I wanted to go. But I mean, there's a lot of things that kind of built up to that. But with where I found a lot of success in real estate, and I think it's an awesome industry for literally anybody, especially if you like meeting new people. It really was that. Like when I first came in, there's a very different niche style of real estate because I work for a land development company. It's not, we do general real estate, but our main focus is developing property, selling land. Like I sell raw dirt, and it's on a very small sales team. It's shark eat shark, very male dominated. So when I came in, people weren't really wanting to help me. They were kind of like, what are you doing here? Like, we don't want anybody else taking a piece of our pie. So I had to teach myself pretty much all of it. I get my real estate license. We're based in North Carolina, but, we travel wherever our developments are. So it was, one was being very organized, two, being really consistent. And where I found a lot of success was, again, the communication standpoint. I always say kind of like mixing the old school values with the new technology. So like the in-person communication, the firm handshake, the strong eye contact, like making that good, solid first impression, but then still being able to follow up and communicate in a very authentic, genuine, trustworthy way. So, you can communicate via text message, via email, phone calls that are very personalized and don't seem like you're just trying to sell something, but you're genuinely interested in like what they want. But that's just naturally who I am. So I found a lot of success in that, but there are like practical ways and tools to implement that for anybody. So for me, the soft skills is where I really excelled. And that's how I've, been able to build a strong referral base. It's how I've been able to make connections with other agents, which have been able to build, partnerships, and continue to do so. So that's where, for me, of course, like as you start working in sales, you find the harder skills, like, just the sales closing and stuff like that, where you pick up on and you become better and you're able to analyze and just understand more. But my main success really came from me being me, and really communicating and learning what people wanted and listening to what the heck they wanted from property. A lot of times we just want to be like, oh, this is great, buy this. And it's not relevant. That's not what they want.
Especially with dirt.
I think that's like, you got to sell a vision. We're not just like touching nice countertops and, running our hands along the railings. Like, I'm like, here's dirt. Can you see your house here? And everyone's, plans are different. We deal with clientele buying, $20,000 lots all the way up to land that's worth $1.5 million. So it's versatility. It's being able to adapt. It's being able to ask the right questions and also listen to what they really want.
Yeah. And that's entrepreneurship, right? Entrepreneurship is selling. It's listening to what the client really wants. It's selling the vision. It's showing the vision, right? That's what it is. Or at least a good piece of it is, both internally and externally with, as a leader in a business. And, that's, again, a key piece to knowing who you are, as we talked about, right? You can be confident and do things the way that you do them because you're confident in yourself, you are, right? A lot of people in sales or, even some entrepreneurs have kind of that imposter syndrome. And it's because Absolutely. They're not confident in themselves because they don't know themselves. They don't, they haven't done that work that we've talked about, right? And again, that will hold people back. So if you're coming from like, this is me, this is how I do it, this is, what it is, here's how I can work with you, let's find the best outcome, and you just work it, like it's so much easier, right? What are you talked about, like working out and that sort of thing? Obviously it's near and dear to me. I train, 20 plus hours a week on most weeks. Right. So, I'm competing in Ironman and all that stuff. So for you though, like what are some other habits that are important that you've cultivated over your career to succeed and stay successful?
So kind of like, you mean like personal habits aside from working out?
Yeah, besides working out, because obviously you kind of covered that, but other habits that you do like daily or weekly that you feel have really made a difference in your success and helped to keep you successful. Obviously, journaling's another one, right? So,
yeah. So, working out, journaling, those are two things that really, take it away. But in addition, and walking is, for us, like for me, that never used to be a workout. Now just going on long walks and listening to podcasts and kind of going into my own zone, that's something that honestly makes my whole evening great. The other thing too, and this is simple and we all do it, but I don't think we take enough into account, is sleeping. Like I used to think, okay, I'm good running 4 hours, every night, and the recovery was terrible. Now I sleep way more and I'm really strict about that. So that's something that has become a much more near dear habit, and I've noticed extreme help with that. But also, again, community is a big thing to me, environment and people around me. So even like I said, I started Move Into Word, which is a nonprofit cultivating groups of people to come together, more like young professionals, focusing on mental and physical habits. And we do, prioritize journaling as a practical tool. So really focusing on putting myself in the rooms with the right people. Also mentors. Like mentors have been huge for me. Like I've really seeked them out. I've asked them the hard questions. I want constructive feedback. I ask for it all the time. So those are kind of things for me that I've definitely seeked out. And I mean, going back even into fitness, like I'm crazy about nutrition. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I love a good beer and a pizza every once in a while, but I like cooking. I like really good food and prioritizing, how my body feels. Because if my body doesn't feel good, then I'm not going to show up mentally. And I just started doing the cold plunge thing about 2 months ago, and that's amazing. So if anybody's open to doing cold plunges, I would highly recommend that. At first I was like, this is a crazy hype, but it's real.
So did you buy a pool or your own bath or a cold plunge bath, or do you go somewhere for it?
Yeah, so we have an actual like cold plunge in the garage, and literally within the first 5 minutes that I wake up, I sit in it for 3 minutes.
So do you 3 minutes, or how long do you go?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
3 minutes. Because I mean, from the research and everything, you get the benefits of 3 minutes, and I'm like, okay, it's
that's enough.
It's 43 degrees. I'm good. I don't need to push this anymore. But it's awesome.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. I cold plunge and sauna are my two things. Like, have to have them.
Yeah.
Like, sauna especially too. I don't know if you know this. They did a study on like 20,000 Finnish men that did like if they did sauna, right? And like for men, 4 times a week for 20 minutes cuts like almost every life altering disease or killer for men by like over 50%. Heart disease, cancer, stroke, everything. Just 4 times a week at 20 minutes. Crazy. So there's some great benefits. And then the cold has a ton of benefits too. It actually activates a lot of the cell and the healing processes and stuff. So a lot of times I'll do like the sauna and then jump in the cold plunge right afterwards, or vice versa. And it's pretty cool. So I'm glad
do you have it at your
that.
house?
No, actually, I've got it at, I go to a pretty high-end fitness, center that we have, and they actually have it all. So I don't have to, otherwise I would, which is nice. I don't have to upkeep it so much.
I know the sauna is next. I mean, totally looking forward to getting that. But the cold plunge was like, for me, that's the hardest one. I could sit in the sauna for 2 hours. I love it. Like the cold thing, 3 minutes. I'm like, oh God, I'm good.
I mean, eventually we'll add it in. We'll add it on to like, the area around the pool and all that stuff, I bet, and stuff. But I got to get my wife more into the cold plunge before I do that yet. So, okay, it's time for Kayla's Misfit 3. These are the 3 things that she wants you to take, that you can take, put in your life, your business, make a difference for yourself starting today. And the way that I always frame this to every guest that comes on the show is I say, hey, look, if you're going to leave this earth tomorrow, and you can only leave behind your 3 best pieces of wisdom for the generations to come after you to help them live their best life, what would those 3 things be? So, Kayla, what are your Misfit 3?
So the first one, I think, really ties into a lot of like the main theme of my book, and then kind of several conversations that we've talked through today. It's really in one sentence: when you realize you can be the cause, problem, and solution for everything in your life, your world will change. So it's really like summarizing taking radical responsibility for everything. I think it's just a simple way to realize anything going on. You could have been the cause, you can still be the problem, but you can also be the solution for it. And you might not have been the cause and you might not have been the problem, but you still can have a solution. And then that would be just controlling what you can control. So that's one thing that I think is just, implementing that in almost everything is important. The second one is, I think this adds a lot of confidence to anybody. I like to say we are all experts in our own experience. So, we're sitting here having this conversation, and several people are going to be listening, but everyone interprets things differently, right? I mean, a lot of things are said multiple times, but sometimes it just takes that one thing to make a big difference in somebody else's life. So, and with that being said, I think with that approach, it opens up more people to be more vulnerable, share their experiences, but also be more willing to listen. So realizing that you are an expert in your own experience and you have a lot to give, and finding really what that is and asking yourself those questions, what that can be, I think is really empowering. And the last one would be, very simply put, and I mean, we all hear this, but really implementing it, being present and be grateful. So, gratitude is a super powerful thing. And, the ability to slow down in such a busy world and be present in the moment really provokes opportunity for being grateful and practicing gratitude. Even on the worst days, there's no way we can't find at least 3 things we can be grateful for. And it's a practice that I do every morning when I wake up. I write down 3 things I'm grateful for. Even if I don't write them down, I think about them while I'm brushing my teeth. It's super simple, but it's just an active thing that I think even if you don't journal and you don't really want to journal, but you want to start writing some stuff down, writing 3 things you're grateful for every morning is a really great way to start.
Oh, Kayla, that's an excellent Misfit 3. And that last one, too, I did the same thing. Can't agree more how awesome that is to start your day that way. If people do want to learn more about you, where should they go?
So really everything is on my website. It's kaylalogue.com. I've got some programs coming out. I'm doing some more speaking engagements. I'm working on some workshops. We've got a lot of cool stuff coming up for Move Into Words. All my Instagram, my Facebook, all of my social media pages are there. My book's there. So anything, if you want to get in touch with me, my email, all those accounts, it's just kaylalogue.com. You can find everything there.
Excellent. We'll link to all that in the show notes, the best show notes in the business for reasons I'll talk about more in a second. But first, for those of you that are new to the Misfit Entrepreneur, it's your first episode with us. Welcome. It's an honor to have you with us. And I hope you become a regular listener and subscriber. And for all of you that are with us week in, week out, I cannot thank you enough for your support of the show. You are what makes this go in over 100 countries every single week. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And make sure and go out and check out the show notes for this episode. They are the best in the business. Why? Because I do them myself as part of my just personal growth routines every single week. I go back through these episodes with amazing guests like Kayla, and I take my best tips, tricks, habits, insights, and pieces of wisdom that I'm taking, and then I share those with you. So check those out, and then go out and give this episode a rating and review, like and comment on it. Help share Kayla's message, because I say this in every episode. We all know one great episode can change someone's life. Maybe something that Kayla shared today was that missing link you were looking for to get to your next level. So share this with others. And again, Kayla, thank you so much for coming on, sharing all your wisdom and insight today.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. It was a great time.